Welcome to another edition of Dad's Divorce Live. I'm Matt Allen, editor of DadsDivorce.com. Today we're joined in studio again by Mike Doherty, the chairman and co-founder of the Children's Rights Council of Illinois, which advocates for shared parenting. You can learn more about his organization at sharedparentingillinois.org. Mike, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Matt.
Now, you've told me that 2011 will be a pivotal year for family law reform, particularly in Illinois. Your recommendations right now have been passed along to the Illinois Family Law Study Committee for consideration.
Yes.
So let's talk about maybe the top three reforms you would like to see done in your state.
The biggest thing that Children's Rights Council brought to that committee was the idea of parenting time minimum guidelines, and that's because that's just become such an issue in Illinois, and we felt that the courts are not well informed of the research that's out there that says this is what's in the best interest of children, which clearly indicates at a minimum approximately 1/3 parenting time for fit, caring, accessible parents. And that's not the norm in Illinois at all. It's a presumption. It's only after lots of litigation. So that was the first thing we brought to this committee, and thanks to some other people involved, some other organizations saw the value in what we brought, and now that is being seriously considered by the full committee for a formal recommendation within hopefully a month or two. I'd say within that time frame for minimum parenting time guidelines to help inform these judges.
Now, if they do agree with it, what happens? What's the next step?
Well, this is just, we're rounding first base in a long ball game here, and a lot of people don't realize that. I hope the divorced parents out there listening to this realize they need to get involved with the process. They need to talk to their legislator in their district. They need to read up on what these recommendations are once they are announced, and they need to be watchful, because once it comes out of that committee, it's got to then be adopted by legislators as proposed bills, and then those bills have to be fought over and deliberated, and they have to make it through committee. Then they got to be voted on. So long process here of getting anything actually through.
What's the second biggest one?
After the parenting time, required parenting plans. We were asked by the committee, the Children's Rights Council Board was asked to look into those and critique that aspect, and that's because they had already received that as a recommendation to be considered previously. So we critiqued it. We found 6 states out there do have required parenting plans, statutory, and so that sends a signal to every parent out there. If you're going to get divorced and you have children, you are going to have to file a parenting plan. So it doesn't solve all the issues, Matt, but at least it sends a signal to everybody, you need to file these.
And is that sort of the same process as to the first point you mentioned, that you're sort of rounding first base in it, or are you a little further along?
There's going to be all kinds of details. They say the devil's in the details. There's going to be a lot of details that are going to be left up for grabs in these proposed bills if they do come out of this set of recommendations once they're published. So people need to be involved and figure out what those details are going to look like.
Sure. And then finally, the third biggest reform you'd like to see take place?
The relocation. Again, we're hearing that the full committee is considering that. In other words, it's made it up from the subcommittee. Hugely contentious issue. We critiqued it, our board did. Robert Farrar addressed the issue here, co-founder of our organization, with the Family Law Study Committee, pointing out that when children are relocated away from the other parent by more than 100 miles or more, it's very destructive to the relationship with the parent left behind. So in Illinois, currently you can move anywhere in the state, but you can't move out of state without a order of removal. They want to change that to saying if you move more than even 25 or 30 miles, you at least have to give the other parent the opportunity to say, wait a minute, what's going to happen to my parenting role now that there's that physical distance in a different community for my children? So that's what they're looking at adopting.
So there's no consideration currently for the distance as long as you're within the state?
That's correct.
Because
it's almost move at will in Illinois. That's a long state.
Right.
We have
someone from Northern California moving to San Diego is probably a big deal.
Yeah, and so there's restrictions to the process of moving out of state, but if you are in East St. Louis area, you can move to Chicago, and that's 4.5, 5 hours.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned to me yesterday the importance of authoritative parenting.
Yes.
Could you talk about that a little bit, explain to our audience, and why is that an important
Yeah, if you Google that term up, authoritative parenting, that's the sort of parenting role you have to have in order to maintain the bond and the nurturing with the parent-child relationship. And you cannot obtain that on an every other weekend basis. The every other weekend schedule is what creates Disneyland dads, and we find non-custodial mothers, there's research on this. A study came out showing non-custodial moms become Disneyland moms when they're subjected to an every other weekend restriction with their children. So you cannot authoritatively parent on that schedule, so you're destroying the bond over time if you don't get into some school overnights. That's really what you need.
Right. Because every other weekend, like you mentioned, Disneyland dads or moms, that's sort of, when you only see your kids 4 days a month, you want to spoil them, you want to take them to ball games.
Not only that, you're not taking them to school, you're not helping them on their homework, you're not doing the routine things that a parent does. Remember, in our society, and our board members, Robert Farrar, surfaced this research that shows absolutely parents are almost equally engaged now with their children, especially if they're both working. And so you're taking a child is used to both parents helping them on their homework and putting them to bed at night on a school night and taking them to school in the morning. Both parents do this routinely, and now you're almost eliminating one parent from doing that. That's not healthy for the children, and the authoritative parenting goes out the window.
So I'm curious to know, what is the ideal parenting time schedule? Is there a cookie cutter solution out there?
What we're proposing is definitely not a cookie cutter. It's a presumption, but there is a cookie cutter out there, and it's the wrong size. In Illinois, we have copies of judicial protocols by counties specifying every other weekend visitation schedules. Wow. So that's got to go. Yeah. That's simply not in children's best interest. And I remember a testimony by one of the top custody evaluators in the United States. He's a very respected man. You can go to our website and read about him. He's in New York now. He used to be in Chicago. And I was sitting behind him when he testified to the Family Law Study Committee that in almost all of the 400 court-ordered custody evaluations he's done, he has recommended nearly equal parenting time.
In all of them?
He said that's the commonest thing he recommends is almost equal parenting time. Wow. I was sitting right there when he said it. So, that's a strong statement. And I think that's why we wrote the laws back in 1977, very progressively in Illinois. It says the maximum involvement of both parents is what's in the children's best interest.
Well, that's Mike Doherty, chairman and co-founder of the Children's Rights Council of Illinois. We appreciate all the advocacy you do for shared parenting, not only in Illinois, but in other states. That'll do it for this edition of Dad's Divorce Live. I'm Matt Allen, editor of DadsDivorce.com.